Righty, I'm in Melbourne. You're in Austin. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Scotty. Good afternoon to you, or good morning to you. We were talking about just before how our weeks were starting, and it's been one of those weeks where I had 15 things to do on my to-do list yesterday. I got one of them done. I added another 10, so I started with 25 today, and it hasn't been much better. So I hope your week is going better than mine.
Well, mate, we developed the underwater check here at W.
Right.
And so when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you grab your to-do list and you break it down, and you figure out, does it need to be done? Can it be delegated? Can it be done by AI? Does it need to be done by someone in this country? and then you can figure out if all of them still need to be done, but definitely understand the feeling. Construction definitely will, you rock up. There's actually a few memes of construction. You rock up at 6:45 in the morning with your cup of coffee and you're ready to go and attack your to-do list. And by 7:05, your day is completely so because some disasters happen on site.
Yeah. And a disaster in construction is probably way worse than disasters that I deal with. So I feel for that. I definitely need to implement the underwater check, and I have been parroting your elevate or automate. I think that's a really good one for anyone who missed last week's episode. I think you should go back and watch that one because it's been something I've been trying to roll out in my business.
Yeah, no, I think hopefully there's some automated tasks in there for you. But anyway, good luck with the 25 to-dos tonight or the 35 to-dos tomorrow. So it seems like a losing battle, but I wish you all the best. And mate, someone else that I think might be fighting an uphill battle at the moment, we've spoken about Yann LeCun. I'm going to call him your man from Meta.ai.
Don't associate me with Yann. Lettuce man.
The grandfather of the chief scientist of Meta. He's been on Lettuce Watch. So we've been talking about his position being in jeopardy pretty much since Alexander Wang came on board, but then Alexander Wang brought on a 2IC who was also a weapon a couple of weeks ago. And Yann's into, I think, day 19 of our 35-day lettuce watch from the British Prime Minister that couldn't beat the lettuce on the window in London. She was fired on day 35. And I said, I'm going to align Yann with day 35. That's how long he's got to live at Meta. He's 19 days in, and we have a big report out of Meta as of 3 o'clock this morning, Australian time. So some probably normal time over in the US. But Meta is officially going to downsize its AI division. Some executives are expected to leave. Now, I'm tipping that's not Wangy. I don't think Wangy's on the way out.
You don't pay 14 bill and then just send them straight out. So I think Yann is on the chopping block, and we did call this, Scotty, and I think it was called at the time that he started picking fights with prominent people on X rather than doing his job.
Yeah, he said, Elon, you're wrong. Researchers are most important. Engineers are no good. So anyway, Yann, good luck for the next 16 days. Well, not good luck because my bet should win. I wonder if there's a poly market on it yet. Or is this just too niche of a topic to be on Polymark?
I'll look it up while you keep carrying the pod. I'll just jump into that as you get into some other topics.
Be good to create one. Another funny from this week, GPT-5 obviously released, I think 8 days ago. Huge hype. I might have even called it possibly the biggest release of, technology for a few years, the most waited for and anticipated. Came out, I spoke last week around, it looks like they've merged a bunch of models and they've managed to get, something up to the O3 model, but to present it at the pace of the 4.0 model. And over the course of the week, there was a lot of complaints from, pretty core users saying, hold on, I like the O3. I like 4.1. I like 4.5. Everyone's got their own favorite model, which they probably didn't realize. They just thought, well, we'll just give you a better one and you'll all be happy. But people have gotten used to their models. Anyway, so there's this great meme. I'm not even sure what cartoon it's from, but it's Sam Altman looking at an elephant, a giraffe, a donkey, a penguin, and an alligator, which are described as all the different models that they've done before. And then he points at what looks like some created animal, called it GPT-5, which is basically just a conglomerate of all of them paired into one. And the reason it's so funny is because I'm pretty sure that's what they've done. And everyone's pissed off. everyone wants, options. Not everyone wants the same thing. So, and the other thing that he's done is he's completely pissed me off. I'm paying $300 a month and I'm using the same model as someone off the street who just downloads the app. So
yeah, someone who's sitting in Macca's getting free Wi-Fi, solving the world's problems, is on the same as you, Scotty. Look, I sort of want to take the other side of this one. I think it's funny because Sam must be sitting there going, I just cannot do anything right, because there was a lot of lead up to this saying, your model naming is crap. There's too many. I don't know which to use for what. Why can't the model just be smart enough to work it out? And he's gone away and done it. Everyone's like, give me my models back. Sure, you can probably still give the option. I saw an interesting take from Reid Hoffman on this, and he's an investor and he's obviously biased, but I think there is some validity to what he's saying. I think they're taking a leap forward in trying to say, AI shouldn't be this complex. You shouldn't have to choose between which model should get the job done. You should just be able to ask it something. And it's probably the first step into having that AI that just sits on you and is your second brain. Because if you've got one of those pins, like, you're not going to be telling it what model to use for certain things. You just want it to work, right? So it does seem like they're taking a step forward there and also trying to just apply to the masses so that anyone who hasn't used it before can go on and start using ChatGPT. And they're trying to, what Reid calls, blitz scale into getting as many users and becoming the default as fast as they can. And if you have to piss off a few of your power users along the way, they've probably made that decision deliberately. And maybe they are saying, well, it's all well and good to have our power users who pay us $300 a month, but really those users are the ones who are probably going to churn off to the Google ecosystem or Claude, like we have done, and gone and paid everyone else, and we're jumping around because we want the latest cutting edge. So it feels like they're stepping away from having the cutting edge and they're trying to appeal to the masses.
They absolutely are. So what they're doing here is they've created a routing system that receives the prompt, and then it decides what model it accesses. So it decides whether it wants to go into a more thinking, in-depth answer, or it decides if it wants to be that more conversational, very shallow answer, like, name me 3 types of apples, versus, a question around, the history and the biology of apples. What I found, though, is I don't think it's that good at making that decision yet. And I don't think the router is that effective. And I think it doesn't know unless then you have to give it a deeper prompt. Whereas if I just went to O3, I know that I'm getting a thinking model. So my prompt doesn't have to be that descriptive. Whereas now I feel like I've got to tell it to almost go deep. Please go deep with your answer. So they've now put a bit longer, instead of me just picking a model, now I've got to do it within the prompt. So, I think that's a little bit annoying. So it's a bit of a bug. He did say that, look, but go easy on us over the next month or two because we are trying some things, which I think's okay. But I do also agree with you that he came out and said our largest market is India and it's our largest growing market. There's not a heap of high net worth people over there. So they're just looking for distribution. Elon's done the same thing. He's given the free users of Grok access to Grok 4, within 2 weeks or 3 weeks of it coming out. So what the play is here is everyone's just going breakneck speed for distribution and not concentrating on the power user. But does it open up an opportunity for another company to lean into the power user and create a premium product? I know with our business, I've sort of defined, an area that I think is interesting called like Lux Tech, like luxury technology that you're willing to pay big money because it has a big influence on your life. And I think I bought luxtech.ai or something as well. That's the domain, which we can go into domains again, but I've been buying domains. I just think, in the gold rush.
It's a dirty bug, Scotty.
Because I think we're jumping around here. Businesses and value adds, I think, are almost getting democratized. Anyone can create anything now. So we're seeing millions of businesses start up. So with any gold rush, the first boom is in the pickaxe. I think the start of it is in the domains. So I'm going domain buying, scattergun domain buying, knowing that some wizard founder in San Fran's going to have to buy it off me one day.
Look, it's a good practice, and there are literally companies out there called domain squatters that do this. And what they'll do is they'll track if a business name that is starting to do better, and then and I think this is all automated, then the price goes up. So when we started BuildPass, we could have got buildpass.com for like, I think $5,000. And at the time, we're not paying that much for a domain. That's crazy. And then we've slowly been tracking it as it's been going up. And now I think it's like 500,000 US to buy it. And maybe at some point we'll end up paying $5 million for a domain because you just need it. But I think that could be a pretty lucrative business. And speaking of lucrative businesses or side hustles, I have looked up the poly market for Yann LeCun and his chances to leave Meta this year. There is a market for it, and he's only at a 29% chance of leaving. So if we think that he's gone and Lettuce Watch is going to come true, we could make a bit of money here, Scotty.
All right, that's it. I'm going in. So if you can send me that link, I'm going to put $100. I'm not a betting guy either. I'm the one Aussie that doesn't bet, but this I am passionate about. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'll put $100 and we will, because that's the end of the year. I mean, that's free money. I'll take you out to dinner in Austin again once this pays out. This is,
well, you're going to have to place the bet because now that I'm in Texas, I actually can't. So,
oh really?
You're going to have, no betting allowed here.
So you walk out and shoot someone in the street, but you can't place a bet.
I was getting into an Uber the other day with my colleague, and we were leaving work. We had a beer at work, and he still had some of his beer left, so he took it with him to get in the Uber. And the guy goes, "Can't have the beer in the car." He goes, "Oh," he's a bit surprised because we're in America and everything, less rules. As he's walking, he gets through his beer and comes back and he goes, so I can carry a gun in here, but I can't have a beer. I was like, you better shut up. The Uber driver might have a gun.
Maybe that's a use case for Waymo. You can have a beer and a gun. You can sit in the back of a Waymo. Mate, another good one this week. The King and the Prince have had a meeting. And just in case anyone was wondering who is the king and who is the prince, my two men have come together. This is almost like a Michael Jackson and Prince moment as well. Jensen Huang has waltzed into the Figure AI office and he's brought with himself a Blackwell GPU and he signed it, and I got all fluffy inside. You knew I would, so you put it on the docket. This was a real coming to God moment for me. And what's very clear is Jensen's the king because there's only one of them signing an autograph for the other one.
Yeah. This is not two-way. Yeah, there might be some level of mutual respect, but it's pretty clear where the fanboying is.
So we've got a little thing we're going to do later, next week, a little teaser around the top 5 most influential people in AI for next week. And, I think everyone knows where I'm going to be on number 1 here, but, we've got some surprises down the chain, and Brett, if he's watching, which we know he probably does because he seems to post things that we talk about a week later, he will be desperate to scrape into that. So, good luck to Brett. Over the next 7 days, hopefully he does something important, gets onto the list. But yeah, really nice to see those two coming together. Let's waste no more time. Let's jump into the AI news for the week. It's been another enormous week. The docket keeps getting longer and longer, so we're going to try and not settle on one issue for too long because there's just so much to get through. And off the top, I want to go through 8Sleep, who are sort of trying to redefine what it means to own a bed. I want to go through their most recent news. So do you want to kick us off with what they've announced?
100%. So 8Sleep, for those who don't know, company that essentially doesn't even sell the bed, I don't believe. It's just the mattress that goes over it. And so it's a digital device that goes over. It's like a sheet, I guess you could say. And the whole idea is it's meant to track your sleep and give you better sleep. So it can set the perfect temperature for the bed, and it'll give you all the biometrics on how good of a sleep you got. So interesting play because rather than just having a wearable like an Oura Ring that is meant, it can only do so much to track your sleep. It's got the whole bed. So an interesting device play that is meant to do basically one thing: track your sleep. So they have just raised $100 million at 8Sleep. So I don't know how long they've been around. They're not new, so they would be doing really good. And they've reported they've got over 1 billion hours of biometric sleep data. Now, Scotty, what is your thoughts on the thematic here? The raising the big round, collecting the data, and then feeding that into AI.
Yeah, so the other thing they do is I think you can heat and cool different sides of the bed. So you've got a partner, you can set your temperature, they can set theirs. You could have a bit of a shape to yours and they can have a different shape to theirs. So they're trying to optimize for how you wish to sleep. And then you get the data on what the settings were for that night, and then you adjust accordingly. A lot of the online influencers around health and longevity have been spurring this on, and they sponsor them as well, so they might be a bit conflicted. What I think is really interesting about this announcement, and I'm going to sort of read verbatim what the CEO has said, and then I'll go into why I think it's interesting. So he's basically, let's talk about this as old school mattresses. For decades, sleep has been passive. You lie down, close your eyes, and hope for the best. We're changing that. We've got 1 billion hours of sleep data, and we've distilled that into fully autonomous AI that knows your body better than you do. We're creating a personal sleep agent that runs infinite nightly scenarios, and then we're going to optimize that for your body. We're going to create a longevity twin, which is, we've heard things like digital twins before, that's going to be able to simulate all the health outcomes and then once again optimize it for you. 8Sleep is becoming the operating system of sleep and longevity. So
Lots of buzzwords.
One thing to me is that a lot of buzzwords, but this is becoming the game plan for every single vertical. And what's interesting is that every product is basically saying, what data have we captured? What domain expertise do we have? How can we use that data? Use AI to capture that data and make it useful. Then how can we, create like an agentic style product that actually does something for you? And then everyone now wants to be the operating system or the ecosystem. However, I'm just not sure that everyone's capable of doing this. I think what's key here is the game plan is clear, which is what they've stepped out. Those 5 steps you can apply to almost every product and every vertical, but I'm not sure everyone's capable of pulling it off. And if you're going to be an operating system or an ecosystem, you have to have a lot of plugins. You have to solve a lot of problems. You can't really solve one. So what else are they going to create? What other products are they going to create? So I'm really interested then in your opinion on what you think of this repeatable game plan for everyone, and then, what the future lies in here.
Yeah. So my take on this is a little nuanced, and I think it is that if you're operating across industries, when I say across industries, I mean, if you're servicing lots of different people, so an 8Sleep, anyone can get it right. So I would, in some ways, view that that's like almost like a horizontal play, going after everyone and doing one thing. So if you're going horizontal, I think doing one thing really well and going deep on that is the right thing, because people will just invest in, I want the best thing for my sleep. But if you're servicing businesses in a B2B scenario, I think that you almost need to do the opposite. You need to do a lot of things for the business, so the business doesn't have 500 tools, and it needs to be highly customized to that niche or that vertical. So if you're verticalized, and you need to be capturing data across the value chain. So I think it's a smart strategy. I agree that this is going to become very repetitive, hearing we are the AI operating system, digital twin, data capture mechanism, blah, 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 4X. So we're going to hear this a lot. Is there going to be one for, when you're doing gym workouts? Is there going to be one as your marriage counselor, and it becomes, the digital twin where you can chat with, Elon's grok, and it's not just an imagine, but it's a fake version of your husband or wife. So I think we'll see this everywhere, but why I like the sleep one is it is so impactful. We've all heard about how, good sleep can be very good for your lifespan and your health. And so if they can actually nail this, it's obviously a very massive opportunity. And I think they've got a really big head start ahead of anyone else other than the people like the Aura Rings or the Whoops or even Apple's intelligence on sleep. They've got better data and it's probably more comprehensive. So look, I think it's a smart strategy. And, the comment human life will never be the same again is probably a bit of an exaggeration that the VCs wanted to hear. But good luck to them.
Yeah, the loop is give us as much as your data as you can, and we will customize something that improves your life. That feels like whether it's B2B or B2C, that's a thing. I think the winners are going to get find out the best way to capture your data, where you're willing to give it to them, and then they're going to create the best user experience and have the highest impact. And I think more and more in this world, whether it's technology or people, you are just going to consistently be measured by impact. Because you're going to have options to do everything you want in life. And whether it's an employee or a piece of tech, you're going to have a measurable that's how is this impacting me? And then you just cut it if it's not adding value. Really, really good watch this space on that one. I thought it was a really good example of an old technology like a bed being turned into an AI ecosystem. So anything's possible. Next one wanted to go into, thought it was a bit of red meat for you. Released today, so hot off the press. Notion introduces offline mode. So last week we spoke about Notion AI and how you've been leveraging that internally at your workflow at work. And now they're talking about going on offline. And we've also spoken about edge compute and models that you can run on your phone. What does this mean? Does this mean anything to you at work?
Not heaps, but it is. Okay. I do want to touch on it. And the reason I want to touch on it is because people might see this announcement of offline mode and be like, so what? What does that mean? So I want to touch on the tech, but just to recap, what is Notion? It's basically a tool that it's a project management tool. You can use it for business or personal. You can put all your documentation in there, your lists, your to-do items, databases, they call them, where you can have any view of like a calendar or a list of things. It's basically like a mini CRM that you could use. It's been a really great product for probably 10 plus years now. They've added a few more products to their line. They've got a calendar product, which is actually really great. They bought another tool and integrated back in. Now they've got a mail product as well. So you do all your email through it. So you can see that Notion is actually trying to become that operating system within, say the Apple or the Windows ecosystem. They don't want you having to use too many other things. Now, my big bet is that Notion might actually go into the web browser space next, because you can sort of see the path. They've gone from project management and management of documentation. They've then gone into calendar. They've then gone into mail. So there's kind of like two big areas where you could go from here. You could go into chat to say you don't need a Slack or a Teams anymore, or you could go into the web browser space is two big areas. So I think that one of them will probably happen this year. With the offline mode, why it's so, impactful, obviously users have been asking this for ages. If you've got a notes tool, you want to be able to use it offline, and it's pretty crazy that they've able to do so well without having that up until now. The reason that something like another note-taking tool can do offline mode fairly easily is they just do notes. What Notion has done is they've had a relational data structure since the start. So it just means that one thing can be connected to something else and can be connected to something else, could be infinitely nested. And it's a really complex data structure that allows you to be really powerful, but it's hard to manage offline because you've got a server that has to have one instance of all of this complex data. And then you've got it happening on your device, and they have to somehow stay in sync in real time if they're connected to the internet, or if they're not, all of these changes happen on one device and then you don't know how to sync it up to the other device. And they might have done different operations on the same thing, and it's just a really complex problem. They've got some employee that did a PhD on how to solve this problem. And so I think that's the most interesting part of this to me, because I don't really need Notion offline, but it's obviously impactful for a lot of people. As far as their AI offering, I don't think this really changes much. I don't think that they've got models offline. I don't believe that Notion AI is available offline. And, if you didn't watch the episode last week, I do highly recommend it. Looking at a snip of how I'm using Notion AI at the moment in our business, because it's been a real game changer.
So if nothing else, they've got some velocity going in their features. So really interesting. I'm actually sort of getting more used to it finally.
Nice.
We're now up to episode 20, and I'm finally sort of being able to navigate my way around it. Starting to see its use case, and I always just respect products that have velocity in their feature releases. So good for them. A really important person I wanted to mention in the AI space and becoming very influential, and once again leading to next week's top 5 most influential figures in AI that you and I are going to produce. This is another guy that I think is going to be right up there. His name is Patel. I think in our first 5 episodes, which would have been 3 or 4 months ago, I mentioned that he jumped on the Lex Friedman podcast and gave a 5-hour pod on the state of AI. And Patel runs a business called Semi-Analysis. And what they are is that they're widely regarded as the leading authority on AI infrastructure spend, and just AI infrastructure, AI in general. And basically, I think they do an amazing, weekly subscription letter that I read around AI and robotics. It could be about, chips, inference, robotics, just where the industry is heading, who's spending what leadership teams are changing. It's just an amazing piece of information. It's like a one-stop shop if you were to have an AI magazine. But what's really interesting is that this week he's gone on the A16Z podcast. And if you're going to listen to one thing this weekend and you're an AI geek like you and I, this is the hour to listen to, because they cover all of the Magnificent Seven's current spend, where he thinks they are going. And also then they did a segment on it, like, what's his advice? What's his advice for Sam Altman? What's his advice for the guys at Google? What's his advice for Zuck, Nvidia? I wouldn't be giving Jensen too much advice. He's going pretty well. It was an amazing pod. And just a couple of the bigger topics I wanted to talk about with you was he was saying that the value capture of AI is currently broken. So he was saying someone like OpenAI is producing, call it, let's make up a number, 10 to 20% of the value in AI at the moment. And they're capturing probably 1. If you have a look at their revenue and profits, which don't exist, compared to Nvidia is probably capturing 80% of the profits in AI at the moment. And then you've got people at the app level that are sitting on top of OpenAI, are sitting on top of Claude, and they might be creating a consumer experience or a coding experience that's making more money than OpenAI. So he's saying at the moment the value capture of AI is broken. The advice that he gave to potentially fix it is saying something like OpenAI, why don't you take people's credit cards? Why don't you build agents? And why don't you take a slice of every single transaction that you help them perform? And then suddenly OpenAI is a payments platform, and you can imagine how far that goes. So if you start creating agents, and we're going to go do a deep dive on agents later, they're talking about replacing the white collar workforce. I'm not so sure that you're going to go, well, I pay $100,000 for my EA, so I'm now going to give you 50. But on the transactional level, something like that does seem like really good advice and a way to start capturing more value of what you're producing, like a user pay system. So what are your thoughts around that in terms of where the values, who's creating the value and then who's capturing the value in AI?
Yeah, so I think 2 things. This reminds me of like a lot of the bubble markets that we've seen. Take the instant delivery, like the food delivery services that we've had. Do you remember when you could get like Uber Eats delivered to you for cheaper than it would have been to go and pick it up, because the discounts were so good and there was free discounts? And it was because there was so much VC money that was being pumped into that space that it was a race to the bottom. And when you've got a new market and you're trying to capture as many users as you can really fast, and there's competition in the space, it does become a race to the bottom. So the value that we're all getting from these tools, whether it's Grok 4, whether it's GPT-5, whether it's Sonnet 4.1, we're probably getting way more value than we're paying for, because this has been subsidized by the VCs in an attempt to win the race. Now, in the hardware layer, Jensen's basically already won. he's had 20 years preparing for this moment and he's that far ahead, so he's able to take all the profits. The app layer is sitting on top of the fact that you've got these very competitive Mag 7s that are in a race to the bottom and are taking that clip on top. So it does remind me of sort of bubbles that we've seen before. Now, where do I think this is going? I think it's already playing out into exactly what you just mentioned, that these tools at that model layer are going to move more into the app layer. We've seen GPT or ChatGPT, you can already do your note taker, trying to kill all the note taker tools that are taking a clip out off the top. And where does this go next? I think you're absolutely right that agents is the next play. I think you mentioned after hearing their announcement of GPT-5, they talked about agents a lot. So this prediction from Dylan, I think you said his name was, I think is talking about that, but then provides an interesting business model over the top of that as well in taking a clip of the agents that they're building. So I think that is going to happen. And if you are building, point solutions or apps that sit on top of these models, we've said it before, I'll say it again, that's a really dangerous place to be if you're just doing one thing that could be replaced by the model. Look, there's nothing too different to what I've said before, but it is a really interesting insight from Dylan about where this is probably going.
Yeah, I think the start of every industry has like the Goldilocks zone for the consumer at the start of it. And I think the one you brought up is a really good one in terms of Uber Eats. We had the Goldilocks zone for 12 to 18 months where it was cheaper to have your food delivered than to go out and buy it. And then eventually, because you're right, pumped with VC money. So someone has to be incentivizing that and copping the bill. If you're not copping the bill, someone else is. And now we're finding that Uber Eats, if it was going to be $30 for me to go pick something up, it's now $50 by the time I don't want to be like last in the queue and get my food, an hour later. Another one I think was Airbnb, where when it first came out, it was like $85 to stay at a beach house in Portsea in Australia. And now it's more expensive than the local hotel. Yeah. And you've got to like clean it yourself, plus pay the cleaning fee and the insurance. So these products they end up getting where they have to become profitable, and then the market corrects and now you end up paying a premium. And I think the other one that we could take it as far back as is like the housing market. So all those stories around in like 1970 in Australia where you could buy a house for 35 grand, that was being done because the government was giving parcels of land away for free because they wanted to create more taxpayers. So you would have some immigration, you would have very cheap land, and you'd be incentivizing builders or developers to develop that land and sell it to consumers. They would run public auctions and you'd buy yourself a bit of land for 50 grand. And you go, what a great story. Fast forward 50 years and we're paying 3 million for that property because the market is corrected and now everyone has to make profit along the way. So we are in, and I think we should be enjoying the golden days of AI, which is people are losing hundreds of billions so that we can answer any question in our pocket. And some of us are wasting it on like, Elon's letting us waste it on like anime porn, basically. So at some point, Elon creating his little anime weird things is going to cost like $5 because of all of Jensen's compute that you need to create your stupid little posts. So hope everyone's enjoying this while it lasts, because I think you're right. Eventually you're going to have to potentially be more considered with your use of AI.
Yeah, it'll level out. And yeah, it is. I think it's similar to the transport we got and all these other bubbles. Yeah, enjoy the free rides here, and we're all off the back of the VC's money, which is ultimately a lot of our money in roundabout ways via super funds and things like that. So you're paying for it, you may as well use it.
Yeah, exactly. Another one that Dylan brought up, and I know you've had a look at it too, is this new spend around inference. So he was sort of mentioning that, so his one point was that Nvidia's got $100 billion of free cash flow at the moment. And he said that, they should be looking into really spending capital into the inference layer. And I know you've done some digging. So potentially, could you tell us what is inference? And who's spending up big in the space? Why would they be doing that? And what does it mean?
Yeah. So essentially, and to those who have listened before, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a recap, but I'll be quick. With AI models, you've got the training of the model, and that's what takes all of these GPUs, and you've got to train on all this data to make the model smarter, and that's like the brain. And then you've got the inference part, which is how do we actually connect with the model and get answers from it, and how can we make that faster and faster? Interestingly, there's a company called Grok, not Elon's Grok, I think it's got a Q in it, that is like Grok with a Q, has done a really good job of being able to do inference in a much faster and better way. So the AI companies are spending up big on heaps of AI infrastructure for many reasons, for the training, for the inference, and the spending is at a really big rate. So we're looking at $17 billion in quarterly capex from Meta. Microsoft's at 24, planning on another 30 billion soon. And Alphabet, Google, is looking like they're going to do in 2025, 85 billion for cloud and data centers. So look, one interesting thing to think of here in a bit of a tangent is what does this mean for the surrounding industries? Obviously thinking about things like construction and labor and robotics, property development, like there's so many other industries we should be thinking about, because as the average Joes that we are, we can benefit from using the models in our businesses, but we're not going to about to get into this infrastructure space unless we really change our business plans. But how can we benefit from this, just like the gold rush, and the picks and shovels that you mentioned? So I think all this highlights, Scotty, is that this is very much here to stay. And to your point before, it's how can we best maximize the fact that it's a changing world and we're getting subsidized by the big players at the moment.
Yeah, so you can look into, as a final takeaway on this, and I know it's pretty niche and people might not have heard the name, but if you do subscribe to Semi-Analysis, you've got a company that's completely dedicated. They're doing things like looking at satellite imagery every day of all the sites around the world where all the major players like Amazon, Google, Grok, Tesla, they're looking at their data centers and OpenAI and Oracle, and they're checking the size of the expansion of them, the size, and they're zooming in and checking what cooling equipment they're using. They're looking at like they're spying on them basically, because there's a lot of secretive spend here on the capital space. Then they're distilling that to you. And then once you've got that information, you could make strategic decisions in your business around, well, if all this capital expenditure is going here, how can I use the Goldilocks zone of value to leverage that in my business, or to leverage that in our strategy? So some of the amount of wealth and capital going into and expenditure going into this, you can think about, well, what are they producing and how can I leverage it? So that's just, an interesting, pretty deep dive on some deep tech there, but hopefully there's some takeaways for everyone there.
Yeah, and I think this really does lend itself to the idea of what can you do with agents that is going to augment or replace humans, which I think is a pretty good segue into what we want to talk about next.
Yes. So, tool of the week. This week, bit of a flex from me. Out of you and I, who was going to be creating agents in the last 7 days, the poly market would have been far better than Yann LeCun's. It would have been up at 85, 90% that Maddie on the poly market would have been building agents this week. But the betters of that, the gambling addicts who bet on that, they would be in shock, because average Joe, Scotty, the builder, has not been building homes this week. I've been building agents.
I hope your clients aren't listening to the pod.
Well, once I build an agent on how to price their house, they'll be very ecstatic. Yeah. So my new very close friends at Lindy.ai put out a post on X a week ago and said, we're going to do a 1 week academy where we're going to help any of our users build agents. We're going to build a community on Slack during it. We're going to share with you all of our internal prompts, and we're going to show you and all of our internal templates. And the first thing I think, what a really cool idea to engage with your users. And I wasn't a user at the time. So, create new users, help them add value from, CEO, chief product officer down, create a community amongst your users, and then sort of help them level up and leverage your tools. And then suddenly now we're talking about it on a podcast. So congrats to them on doing that. And what I found was that the agent building space with N8N, and some of the other players, I know Google are getting into it now as well. I saw it happening live online, and I felt like it's probably still that one step ahead of the time commitment I've got and potentially of my technical expertise. But what Lindy.ai to me is showing, and I went to my first class yesterday, and we built 3 agents, is that this is a really user-friendly model they're going for. So to break down what Lindy is for people as well, when we talk about building agents, it's usually just understanding an existing workflow that you usually manually handle. It's a composition of tools. So it might be like, when I get a HubSpot new lead come in from my CRM, I then click on that lead and I decide whether to give them a phone call or send them an email. That might be a traditional workflow for some people in your business. What an agent in theory will do is it will say, it's like an if this then that. So what we're doing, and this is an example that we had in the Lindy day, was, okay, a lead comes in through HubSpot. We then can grab that name, and this is what we built. And then I want you to search, this is the agent, I want you to search the internet for everything about that person. So we want to use Google, Perplexity, LinkedIn, and I want you to understand everything about this lead. So at the moment, I've done nothing. Like I still don't even know the leads come in. I want you to gather all the data on them, understand any public post on anything they've ever done, and build me a psychological profile of that person so I understand their needs and wants and what they're interested in, and then put together for me a meeting or a call or an email preparation cheat sheet on what their personality profile is, what their interests are, and give me a full background check on that person. Now, that might seem super creepy to people, but it's happening. So it doesn't matter if it's creepy. It's currently happening.
It's happening.
We built that yesterday, and then we also did one just around, your average meeting note taker, converting that not just into a meeting minutes, but then an actionable list of works to do. And then if we spoke about someone, breaking that down and then flicking reminders off to people to get their task done. So so what you're doing within building this agent is you're saying, these are the tools I want you to use. I want you to use Microsoft Outlook. This is if you move Microsoft Teams, Excel, and I want you to and use a Claude model to, bring this all together and basically completely automate what was a manual handled workflow previously. So first of all, what are your thoughts on these types of agent building tools? And then secondly, I want to go a bit deeper into where it goes from super technical person building, average Joe like me, to crossing the uncanny valley into everyone is going to be doing this.
Yeah. Well, firstly, Scotty, congrats on winning the poly market there. I wouldn't have bet on you either. So well done. But no, in all seriousness, I think these tools, especially the more user-friendly ones, like we're saying with GPT, trying to capture every user rather than just the enthusiasts, that's what they're obviously trying to do. And I think that's definitely the way forward. I want to take a really quick step back onto the progression from where tools were to where they are now. And I saw a post about this maybe 12 months ago now that I think defined it quite well. You've got workflows, then you've got AI-enabled workflows, and then you've got AI agents. And so a workflow was the tools like Zapier or If This and That was one of them, where you had to define every single step. So that's the HubSpot example that you gave. If this thing happens, then this thing happens, and this thing happens. You had to define it out. An AI-enabled workflow is you're still defining the steps, but in one of the steps, you're saying use an LLM to get some information for me or to summarize something. So maybe it is that get the lead, come into HubSpot, then you go and find them on LinkedIn, and then you get the information, the profile information, and you give the LLM a prompt that asks it to summarize what they've done. And then you say, write that in an email or whatever the step is. So that would be an AI-enabled workflow. And what an AI agent is when you've actually got steps in the workflow where the agent is deciding what to do. And so the AI agent is basically, you're still setting it up in a way. You're giving it its goals, its guidance, what it should do. You're giving it the tools that it should use as well. But then the LLM is smart enough to make decisions on its own, and it might go down one path and figure out, okay, well, this tool is actually not the right tool for me to use. And as long as it's within the guidelines of the prompt that you've given it, it should then go figure out the next thing to do. And it's like this, it's non-deterministic in the sense you haven't given it all of the potential branches that the logic could go down. It's just an agent that is performing on its own to do these things with the tools you've given it and the advice and the guardrails that you've put around it. And that's why the agents are so powerful, because they have more flexibility and they can do more things. And it makes it, funnily enough, easier for the average Joe to go in and do it, because it's actually a lot simpler to build because the AI is doing a lot more for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said there is interesting, because previously when I used ChatGPT Operator, and tried to get it to do something like 6 months ago, it just stopped at every decision. As soon as there was a decision to make, it stopped and said, what do you want me to do now? What was really interesting with Lindy, when you get the prompts, so the AI side of this is it uses Claude Sonnet, and you give it prompts about what to do at each decision. And you say to it, do not ask me questions. You are a fully autonomous, well-paid executive. You need to make the call. Do not stop until this task is done. Like, that's part of the prompt. It's like, do not ask me questions. And then you actually have to find an exit for the agent. So an agent will just keep working until you define its exit. And then what you do is you define its exit with a deliverable, and then you tell it to stop. So it's really funny. It's sort of the way they put it was, it's like having a really, really smart intern. How would you hand over work to them? How would you delegate? You would set them up, tell them everything that you do, give them an output, and tell them, and the way he defined it was really funny. He's like, he wrote in it like, go sit in a corner until it's done. Like, don't bug me. But he's talking, and he was talking to a model. So anyway, really cool. I think what's interesting is the word agent at the moment is the buzzword of this year. There's new products that are coming out of Y Combinator. One's called Rebolt, where they're basically doing this where the whole thing becomes one prompt. So instead of like this, program building step-by-step of agents, you just write one prompt and say, I want you to grab this file from SharePoint, use OpenAI to, or it could be an Excel spreadsheet, use OpenAI to summarize it for me and send an email to the whole team with the updated P&L. And my executive summary. Enter. And then it goes, opens up SharePoint, opens up Excel, runs a model, summarizes, gives you an executive summary, sends the email. So you're a one-touch prompt from doing what might have taken you 3 or 4 hours in your job. So that feels like the next step. I haven't got an outcome yet. So we've built the agent. What was funny is, I can see it doing things in the background. And I don't know if this is to do with like Lindy's servers or compute or my internet or what, but we were sort of 4 or 5 hours in, and it would take longer than it would have taken for me to do. So it's, I'm not doing it though, which is great, but it's not fast. So watch and see. Yeah, the agent space is evolving, but I think until they really solve that it's just you typing in a prompt, it's still too much of a heavy lift for the average person.
Agree.
All right. Well, last week we spoke about Google Sheets getting their act together with the equals AI. And, in general, Google's just been getting their act together over the last 6 to 12 months, I think in a really cool way by just unlocking all the different elements of their ecosystem and products. But what have we seen this week from Satya Nadella? I feel like Microsoft just haven't been able to land a punch, even though they've got the biggest lead of all time with how many users they have in their products. But have they made an announcement for Excel a few weeks after Google Sheets?
Yeah, there's definitely been a thanks for watching to Microsoft in seeing our announcement of the Google announcement.
Our announcement.
Yeah, we're going to claim that. Yeah, so they've added the equals Copilot into Excel. So for all of those who are heavy Excel users, we want to hear in the comments if you're using this, if it is any good, if it's landed. As I mentioned last week, I've used the equals AI inside of Google Sheets, which did a really good job. I was very impressed with it. Something that is interesting is that you don't get charged for it at the moment, and you can run it on a really big scale. So you can imagine when you're using something like ChatGPT, you're going in, you only got a few conversations open at any time, and it's having to respond to that. I don't know what the actual limits are. We should look at this and report back, but you can likely put 1,000 rows in, and then you can put the prompt into each of those 1,000 cells, and then you can run it at the same time. And so it kicks off a process to do this in the background. And I don't know what the limits are, but you've got to suspect there must be some pretty heavy limits on this, because otherwise people could abuse the shit out of it. Like, you could just have 1 million rows and get it to do something for you. So I am interested to see what the limits are, and curious, because I'm not a big Microsoft user myself, to hear anyone who lives in spreadsheets in Excel. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. If you've used this, if there's any good use cases, and if Microsoft has finally managed to land a good AI product, because as you've said, everything that we've heard or seen or witnessed ourselves on Copilot so far hasn't really hit the mark.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from this is we've spoken about founder-led businesses versus corporate CEO. And corporate CEOs are so dialed into shareholder value as opposed to innovation. And founder CEOs are into innovation and product conventionally, right? I want to list out some company names, and let's have a think about who's done really well in the space and who's not. So we've got ChatGPT, Grok and X, Claude, Shopify, and I would say that we feel like all those companies are on the front. They're releasing new products all the time. Their velocity, they're gaining they're gaining users every week. They sort of seem to be dominating. On the other side of it, we have Apple, run by Tim Cook. We have Microsoft, run by Satya. And early on, we had Google that was sort of having their corporate CEO run things. And then we saw Larry and Sergey come back 12 months ago, and we've seen a huge shift in Google. They've gone from, Bard releasing those like fully posts early on. We're allowed to say that? I think so. Bleep it out if you want. And then suddenly Sergey comes back, and Google's velocity of products over the last 12 months has been insane. How have Microsoft screwed the pooch on this so bad? So like they've had Copilot going for 3 years. They own half of OpenAI, and they can't integrate AI into their products. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I want Bill Gates back, but you just see that these founder-led businesses are the ones who know how to see a new technology and how to activate it into their product, as opposed to just building shareholder value. I'd probably throw Nvidia and Jensen in there as well.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to the founder ego, I guess, is larger than the corporate world of wanting to just deliver shareholder value. Founders want to leave legacy, and they want to make sure that they don't just wither away into the abyss. Whereas someone who's running the company, they are legally, a corporate CEO comes in, yes, they legally have to protect shareholder value. But their benefits are also tied to that, right? Like they get bigger pay packets, bigger equity deals it's directly tied to share price. Whereas typically the founders of these companies, they're already so rich that they don't care about the money anymore. They're happy to put everything on the line to create a legacy. And it's probably just comes down to the emotional side of and the characteristics of these crazy founders like the Elons and the Zucks of the world. They're so competitive. Like that's how they created the business in the first place. They're so resilient and so competitive. They want to be the best. And it's just a totally different profile to a corporate CEO who's come in to protect shareholder value. And so we should actually come up with a list, Scotty, of all of the founder-led businesses. You've listed some really great ones there. I've just put it into GPT to have a look at a couple of other good ones. Palantir is one who's been on an absolute rip. Alex Karp leads that. There's Stripe, who we've talked about before as well. And then the non-founder-led ones, Microsoft, Apple, Google's in that list. But, we've talked about Larry back. And Sergey. They're coming back. IBM, Adobe, it says that Salesforce is non-founder led. I feel like Mark Benioff is still at the cutting edge of that business. So, but anyway, I think it's a really interesting insight, and I think there are actually large firms that only invest in public founder-led businesses, probably for this exact reason.
Yeah, so it's sort of like democracy versus dictatorship. So they're so focused on quarterly earnings, and that's what they're trained to do, that's what they're concentrating on. But I think if you look at someone like Jensen, in 2015 and 2016, he was hosting interviews talking about, because they were gaming chips, right? And then he started talking about GPUs being the chip layer for AI. Now, he was still making some money off the gaming chips, but he went all in on this new technology. Big risk, too big a risk for CEO to make, right? Too much CapEx. We saw
get board approval.
Nah. So he had a vision. He went for it. I think this sort of focus on quarterly earnings, we are not in a quarterly earnings cycle of the biggest technology shift of all time. We are in as like Dylan Patel was talking about, we're at the invest at all cost and win. It's all the money's going to filter to the top. So I'm not sure these guys like Tim Cook. I mean, he's just sitting on the sidelines. He had that thing with Trump the other day. He was like, sure, we'll give you $600 billion for you to leave us alone. But who's going to come into Apple and shake it up and go, God, we can't, their biggest problem is that you can't get Steve Jobs from the grave, but perhaps they should just build a bot on all the public available data of Steve and then just put it in charge. Just and let him tell everyone what to do, the AI version. But I just think, you could add Perplexity to the companies you just spoke about as well. It's so clear right now that and you see Zuck's just, and the other thing is there's no lost cost, fallen cost fallacy with founders. Mm-hmm. Founders are happy to go, I backed the wrong horse, chop it off. Like he did it with VR, backed it, spent some money, chop it off. But it hasn't stopped him from having another massive swing and just dropping billions on super intelligence, talent. Whereas any other CEO, they would have got told from the board, no, you've already backed the wrong horse once. We're not going to let you spend this money again. And he's just gone, oh, well, I'll fucking spend it again. I made a mistake. But I'm not going to make a second mistake. I'm not going to do it this time. So,
and there's actually there's a structural reason as well. Like a lot of these founders of the large tech businesses do have, super voting shares, and they can actually make these decisions without board approval. So, yes, I agree that a founder is less likely to get held back by the board than a CEO is, but they also can structurally have more rights to just go and do this and no one else can say anything.
Yeah, I agree. And they also usually a risk appetite that's slightly higher than the average corporate CEO. All right, mate, let's move on to the robot rundown where the rubber meets the road in physical AI and technology. This week, it's very hard to talk about Teslas and not robots at the moment because every car on the road is basically a robot. So what has Tesla announced this week and why is it interesting?
Well, it's personally interesting to me because I'm the market for a Model Y, and a Model Y that is going to support a family. So they have announced the Model Y L, which I presume is for large. It's got 6 seats in it, as opposed to 5. So we've got some back seats in there. So very much targeting families. The interesting part about this launch is not so much on the technology. It's just looks like it's Tesla technology. It's got good miles. It's fast. All of the great things that Tesla does, in a nice looking Model Y that's a bit bigger, which is really appealing. But the most interesting thing to me about this, other than being in the market myself for this type of car, is that they are launching in China first. So I didn't really get this. And we had a quick chat about this before we got on the air, and Grok sort of helped with a bit of reasoning. But I'd throw it over to you, Scotty. Why do you think Elon has decided to launch this car in China and not the US? And what does that mean for where Tesla is currently at?
My thinking is that Tesla does not have a US competitor. Tesla is they are in a fight with all Chinese EVs, and I'd probably put BYD at the top of the list because they're government funded. So once again, buying a BYD, you're in the Goldilocks zone of in the consumer space of that, because the Chinese government is giving them billions to basically sell cars at a loss to get mass market uptake. And then once you're all into your BYD, then they're hoping it's going to be sticky and they're going to become profitable. Tesla is already profitable, and it's really hard for an incumbent to compete with a subsidized, business with an economy like China and a government like China behind it. So I think he's seeing the evolution of the Xiaomi and the Huawei and the BYDs coming through China. And he knows that if they've got a product ready, priced at 47,000 US, 70,000 Australian, or 300,000 yuan, that he can deliver a product that's really like, Chinese people love those vans, with 6 seats in them. And, whenever you're driving around China, you get picked up in a 6 or 7-seater van. So he's saying, we've got a product ready to go that's affordable, it might be American made, but I think it's a really appealing product. I mean, the first thing I saw was like, I want one. Like my missus drives, my wife, that's probably a better term for a podcast. She drives a Land Rover, a Range Rover, and it's like $5,000 to look at it. Like when you take it to the mechanic, it's like, oh, the windscreen wipers look bad. That's 500. And then you've got, that little one bit of noise you heard? Yeah, it's in the middle of the engine. We need to take the whole thing out to access it. A Tesla, the idea of a 6-seated Tesla for 70,000 Australian new, with Grok in the software and full self-driving if we ever allow it. I mean, this is a very, very cool product. And I think he's going straight at the heart of the enemy. He could have released it in the US, but the Model Y is probably doing extremely well in the US. And I think this is going, hey, you guys like 6-seater cars, have some of this, and then throw it out there to BYD and Xiaomi and go have a crack.
Yeah, look, I'm going to break my own rule here, and which the rule being never bet against Elon. And I don't think it's the best move, with the biggest risk being I can just see the American crowd going, we've wanted this car. We love the Model Y, but we want the 6-seater. And why do I have to wait until 2026 to buy it? And I've already got a bunch of BYDs that look pretty cool that are coming to the market here. Maybe I'm going to try out one of them because they're cheaper. And I also just think I don't know if you can win in China. Like you said, the government is literally funding these other companies. So can Tesla actually win in China off the back of they've added an extra seat to their Model Y? Yes, I want to buy this car. I just don't know if they are differentiated enough for this to be, if they're going to capture all this extra market share in China, and they risk pissing off their biggest user base, which is the US. So I think it's an interesting move. I don't know if it's the best move, but like I said, never bet against Elon. That's very dangerous, and we'll see how that bet pays off.
can we just ask the producer to everything Matt just said, a shining American flag behind him, because he's officially a patriot. You've been there for 2 weeks and you're like, why hasn't he brought us the cars first? We're American. He's meant to be American. Going out there to China, giving them cars. You used to be the pro-China guy. Now you're like, damn American company need to get our cars. I love it. So let's make sure we get the big American flag behind Matty's newfound heartfelt patriotism. I love it, Matty. You're a passionate guy.
I'll get a real one for you. We don't even have to sub it in. I'll just get a real one next time.
How good. I love it. Going from one legend to another, my man Jensen. Nvidia are the substrate of the AI and robotics boom, and all of the biggest players are their biggest clients. What do you do if you're creating all the tech, capturing 80% of the value already? What do you do if you're literally the godfather of business? I think what you do is you just go, F it, I'm coming after all of my clients and I'm just going to go vertical. Wait, in 2040, there will be one company and it will be Nvidia. He has come out and he's saying that we're going to have robots on stage, Nvidia robots. They're in a partnership with Foxconn. They're going to showcase them in November on what they're calling the beginning of the physical AI era. So not only are we doing the chips, we're going to do the hardware. He's also doing a lot of work at the moment, as we said, in the inference space, but also they're working on a lot of software. So they've got the training facilities for robots. So they're probably the biggest B2B business in the world, I would have thought. And, they've got a B2C part of their business, but this is a little bit scary for everyone else, don't you think?
Yeah. I think this just reinforces that concept that we were talking about before around these layers, right? So we talked about hardware being at the bottom, and then you've got the models, and then you've got the applications. And we talked at length about how the models are trying to eat the application layer, and Jensen's just sits at the bottom. Or maybe, like, if you flipped it on its head, he's sitting at the top. He's like the apex, right? He's the, what's it called? The
apex predator.
The apex predator. That's what I'm talking. He's the apex predator at the top. He's just coming to eat everyone's lunch, and he's starting with the other big guys. And you've OpenAI and Anthropic and Tesla are all screwed. Then what does that mean for the rest of us? But look, it's. I think it's a baller move. It kind of reminds me of like when you do have the power, why not go and flex it? It's like what Trump does all the time. Like, he knows that, yes, maybe America doesn't have, hasn't had the greatest economy in the last 10 years. But he knows he's the most powerful guy in the world, and he's just flexing it everywhere he goes. And Jensen's probably channeling a bit of that right now. He's got the biggest company in the world, or I don't know where it sits right now, depending on stock price, but has been. And he is so far ahead of all of his competitors. Him saying, I'm moving into your space, he doesn't care about anyone trying to move into his space because he knows he's so far ahead.
I think I've got the world's greatest meme, and we're going to once again put our producer to work at the end of the show. Nvidia chips are the Trojan horse, and right, the city of Troy is like Google, OpenAI, Tesla. They're all the big players. And in the Trojan horse, he's got the chips. He sends them in, and he just breaks out and murders them all with their own products. He just goes completely vertical. They're like, yeah, make some money off my chips, and then I'm going to take all your data and all your user experience, and then I'm just going to do it myself. So there we go. Nvidia Blackwell chips are just the Trojan horse to Nvidia becoming the only company that matters. So anyway, my man, get on board. Another thing in the robot rundown, we've spoken about this company, I think in our last 2 or 3 episodes. They are the automated excavators out of San Francisco called Lumina vehicles. They've shared a really cool post that I thought gave everyone a bit of hope And there's also a deeper context around it. Around last week, we were talking about like there's an opportunity for the Waymo of everything. So everything that's currently manually done in blue collar workforce, any tool that you can think of, anything that operates, this gateway drug of this Waymo style control, putting some controls on top of it, on top of the actual piece of machinery, and then having that be able to control from anywhere in the world, which opens up lower cost of living locations like India and the Philippines, etc. We spoke about that being the gateway drug to fully autonomous, which we're seeing Waymo in the middle of doing. But what I thought was really cool, bring it down to earth and practical for some of our listeners and even ourselves, you and I, was the CEO there, Ahmed Shuba. I think he's in his 20s, which once again is making me feel old and like I'm not doing anything at work. But he posted a post that he said, like, this is what we've done in 2 years. And the post is of basically what looks like a broken down lawnmower in 2022, where he's probably putting some manual controls onto their actual almost ready to release autonomous bulldozer and excavator. So once again, really cool journey. But what a couple of points I wanted to raise was just around the velocity. So the idea that it was one thing to have a software startup that takes, a year or two to get online or an MVP. But now we're talking about serious hardware now. And he's going at CAT, the biggest and probably, he's going at CAT, one of the the biggest excavator companies in the world. What are your thoughts on this, on the two questions around what you can actually get done in a couple of years in a seriously difficult space? And then two, once again, thinking about this controls as a gateway drug to autonomy.
Yeah. Well, like starting with the controls part. Yes, I agree. That's the gateway drug. And we talked about Flywheel last week, who is retrofitting the excavators. And maybe that's the first step in a strategy. But Ahmed and the team from Lumina, like they've gone straight for the jugular. Like they're not messing around with the retrofit, right? Like in this photo, they were retrofitting a lawnmower, but they're not commercializing that. That was just their first prototype. They're going straight to we're just rebuilding the whole thing. So to the point of, what does this mean for velocity? It is so inspiring to see a story like this where someone can move at such speed. Because like you say, building software quickly, like building a big software company and taking down, one of the big players in a couple of years. I think one of the good examples I have of that I've seen recently is a company called Pylon that has raised, I think, a $35 million Series B. They're only 2-3 years old. And their public mission statement is essentially the Zendesk killer. Like we're just going after customer support in the B2B space. And that's really inspiring to see how big the ambition is and how quickly someone can build B2B software. But then you look at this and you go, yeah, that adds like a 10x layer of complexity. And so how is this possible? How is it possible that a big company like CAT doesn't have these autonomous electric vehicles with all the resources that they have? Well, it's like the reasons behind velocity that we've talked about before. You need people who are committed to a cause, that have no red tape around them, that don't have anything to lose, and are just really cutting out anything that isn't required. All of the dumb requirements are removed, and you just go as hard as you can with a cracked team of people that are working really long hours and are driven by making change in the world. And to see a company build a autonomous electric excavator, regardless of how much funding they've got, in 2 years is so inspirational. And it does make me think as well. I'm like, how much could we lift our game in what we do? And even though we're 4 years old now, it does feel like we've already started to slow down a little bit compared to where we started. And that's a normal thing that happens. But I think in the way the world is right now, the riskiest thing that you can do is start to slow down, is to give in to the inertia of red tape and rules and, becoming a normal company. And so that's the riskiest thing you can do. And I mean, for me, it's inspiration. And Aaron, my business partner, and I have talked about this internally. It's like, what could we be doing to ship at 10x the velocity we are? There's so many tools out there we can be using now. There's so many different ways of thinking, and we really don't have that much to lose. The big, massively established players have so much revenue to lose and shareholder value to protect in public companies. And while, yes, our company has shareholders, the shareholders in our company invested to get the moonshot outcome. They didn't want a 2-3x return. They wanted a 10 to 100x return. And I think the best way, or the only way to get that kind of return right now, is to move at this kind of velocity, and to see a hardware company moving that fast. So inspirational. So I know that's a bit of a rant, but yeah, I feel very passionate about this story.
Yeah, so once you've been around for 3 or 4 years, you're not necessarily an incumbent, but you're getting to a maturity. I think I saw someone the other day, I think it was the Software as a Strategy team, which sort of do like an event in San Fran every year, and then a podcast. But he's basically saying that, you know, when they're looking at investing in founders now, they're saying, are you that cutthroat that you could go, okay, we were doing this for 2 years, but now we're going in this direction. And that might mean something really aggressive internally, or just throwing everything out and starting again or whatever. So I think we're seeing a lot of that. And then once again, it's back to that founder or CEO led. So like, for instance, the CEO of Caterpillar started in 1925. They've just recently got a new CEO, but they're sort of 3 or 4 CEOs in. So potentially, if they had a founder at the helm, would they be looking at this and going, holy, let's run a whole R&D division that throws out everything we know and just starts again. And let's talk about autonomous excavators and bulldozers and mining equipment. So yeah, really interesting space. And I think the guys over there at Lumina have been doing something really exciting. Mate, we're running out of time. So we're going to get into the founder files. And we've got a couple of quick ones this week. The first one was just one that I've brought up. Neo Farm, really cool. Like your man from Dyson, they're getting into using robotics for organic farming and gardening. And I was thinking, oh, good for them. Like I love these old school industries, construction, farming, agriculture. Take people using robotics and taking a step forward. Then lost complete respect when they said developing their patented system that automates the toughest part of farming. Now, patents are for bleep out the second part if you want to, or keep it, don't mind. We are what we are. And I think this business seems like they're going down a great track, but if you are dedicating any part of your energy through this AI and robotics revolution into patents, I think you are wasting time and energy and actually sending the wrong signal to your staff, customers, and the wider competition. I'm not sure what Nvidia's patents are or whatever. I just know that Jensen's talking about getting 10 times better every year. So what's the point patenting something if you're planning on being 10 times better next year? And also in the age of AI and robotics, AI is going to think of every idea ever imaginable. Like Elon's talking about Grok training on synthetic data moving forward, not on real world data. So we're going to be creating new chemicals. We're going to be understanding new things in physics. What do you think you can actually patent? What makes your idea so smart that it should stand the test of time for the next 100 years? Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional about this. What are your thoughts?
Well,
you can talk about these guys if you want,
Scotty.
or patents.
My thoughts don't matter because in the time that you were speaking, I've actually just, 1, filed a patent, and 2, bought the domain for patents are for So I now own that, and I'm going to be taking all the credit for it, even if it is my own undoing. No, look, I do agree with everything you just said. You've got to move faster in this world rather than wasting your time on patenting something. Maybe there are some use cases like in the medical space where they're useful. I don't know enough about it, but in general, I think the ethos is right. Just keep getting better every day. Don't worry about protecting the IP, because that's how you're going to create a big company.
Yeah, it was like when those guys, didn't they send you a cease and desist letter because you did a rebrand and they thought it looked too much like theirs or something? It's like, go off. Just concentrate on go build a good product. Like, what are you even looking at us for?
Well, they genuinely thought that we tried to copy their logo, and my response back was, I would never try and associate my brand with yours. That is a real step back. So this is a mistake on my behalf for making it look anything like yours, even if we did happen to release their logos at basically the same time. Anyway, you've got a little bit of man love for my guy, which is making me a bit jealous. But Toby Lukey from Shopify, what have you seen from him?
So I do give you this one. Toby Lukey is your guy. You brought him to my attention, so I started following him because I always, after a podcast with you, I follow up and make sure I put into place some of the things that you've led me in the right direction on. But he's been pretty vocal over the last 6 months publicly. I think he started with basically going public with a message to his staff and team saying, if you don't completely adopt AI in every part of your role, I don't want you here anymore. And for a European, especially a European company, that was pretty bold.
I'll give you a quick correction. He's not
European.
He's European, but they're a Canadian company. He's in Canada now. Yep.
Is he European though?
Yeah, I think he's. Oh God, I think he's Polish or something. Or German. I'd have to check that. But yes, he's European, but Canadian company now.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between Europe and Canada in terms of all they seem to ever want to talk about is red tape, regulation, and slow down. You know, slow down and stare at our 1,000-year-old relics in our countries and just focus on them. Stop looking at tech. But anyway, super refreshing in terms of being really bold, being really innovative, and then being really strong in his direction, once again, as a founder and CEO. But what I thought he's taken to the next level now and wanted us to quickly touch on before we close was, I know that, you know, second time round starting a business, I was like, we need to get systems in place. Businesses need to be run on systems and data and feedback loops and flywheels, you know, to really push forward and generate a really good product, and also a culture that concentrates on the right things. What he is saying, what feels like almost the next level of this, which is capture all the data you want. More data, the better. But basically every KPI, which is a key performance indicator, or an OKR, I forget what it stands for. Do you know what OKR stands for? Or should I just quickly move on?
Objective and key result.
Yeah. So very similar, leading, lagging indicators, all that kind of stuff. He's saying all of those can basically be gamed. And once you start focusing too much on a certain metric within your business, you're going to lose focus on what the actual core mission of the business is. So he's saying that, you know, capture all the data you want, but know that it's going to be gamed, and then know that it's going to lead you eventually, potentially in the wrong direction, whereas sticking to your mission and core values and your overall, you know, taste in the business is what matters more. So did you have a thought on this? Because he is your man and I'm trying to jump on board.
No, look, I love the fact that you're onto his content now. I think that he runs a fantastic company in like very much of a founder mode way. He's got some great insights. He's done some podcasts that I definitely recommend you jumping on to listen to. But this is actually a big thing that we do try and now employ in our business, that decision making can be 80% analogy and intuition and taste and emotion in business. But that doesn't mean that you could ignore the 20% being data driven and data led. And that 20% is still really, really important. So you do want to capture all the data. You want to be across it. You want to use that to facilitate your decision making, because that's very important to getting to 100% the best decision. But don't just be data led. Don't just go and say, well, if this metric is telling us to do this and we all just operate like robots in our business, you can't take the human element out of it. I think one of the great examples from Amazon was when they were talking about that they had these really great support statistics. They said that support was, you know, if someone reached out, they'd get back to them in a minute or something. And the leadership had said, well, we haven't heard that. And so Jeff goes and in the board meeting just goes and calls the support line, and they're stuck there waiting for like 15 minutes. So you can't always trust the data. It's really important, but you've got to think from intuition as well. And that's just a great insight from Toby from Shopify.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing to add from me, apart from I'll take that inspiration and we won't follow our distribution metrics across social media channels. I'm going to listen to my dad saying that his friends are listening. So we'll look at the data, but we will trust our parents saying their friends are listening as the ultimate feedback loop for us.
Yeah, from little things, big things grow. Is that the saying?
Absolutely. And a little bit of an inside joke. Enjoy your very exciting night out ahead of you.
I will. I'm going to enjoy the best wings in Austin.
Very good. Apologies to everyone who doesn't know what that's about, but Maddie's going to a controversial wings location. We'll let everyone else do the math on that one.
Very good. Well, it's been a pleasure, Scotty. I'm on 5% battery and have got global stand-up in 3 minutes. But it's been always a pleasure to jump on with you. I think this has been a great episode, and we hope that we will get some of that distribution shortly.
Enjoy, mate. Don't forget those 25 to-dos before the end of the day.
Don't remind me. All right. See you, mate.
Yeah.